Unjustly fire me. Let me take down your business real quick. This happened a few years ago and still makes me giggle with glee to this day. I'm a 34 years old female who has always been a bit of a tomboy. I like cars, sports, and reptiles. When I was 25 I wanted a career change and finally follow my dream of working in an auto repair shop as a painter, like my father always did. To start my education I needed to already have a job at an auto repair shop as an intern. So I searched and called a lot of companies to see if they had spots. There were literally several companies that laughed at me because there's no place for a woman on the work floor. Disheartened I tried one final company who said he'd take a chance with me. I was thrilled. I was promised lots of opportunities to learn and a steady job after graduation. I started a week later and the first 2 weeks were awesome. I learned a lot and was promised even more opportunities. He promised I would have 2 to 3 hours a week of private time with the resident painter for practice. Soon after though it went downhill. The owner had bid on a contract with a large city in our country to restore underground containers. I had to sand them down, put sealant on the edges, and prepare them for painting. Tedious work, but I did it diligently. The promised practice time never happened. After a while, all I did, day in day out, 8 hours a day was sand down underground containers. By then end of the day my hands and wrists were numb from the vibrations. This by the way is illegal. You're not allowed to sand with a pneumatic sanding machine for more than 4 hours a day in my country, as it causes severe wrist and hand issues. After several months the contract with the city ended, and I hoped my promised practice time would come. But no, it didn't. I was given jobs that had nothing to do with my education. I was told to do jobs that a contractor should do, like put rubber in front of the windows, repair the sliding doors, repair walls and other small things. Basically nothing to do with my desire to become a painter. After 6 months of doing literally nothing that I could count to my education, my boss called me into his office. He told me he was fed up with my attitude. He made a mistake hiring me. I was fired on the spot. I was heartbroken and cried the whole way home. I didn't get it. I put 110% into my job, working hard, always on time, staying late if needed and never complained. I didn't understand what happened and was pretty down for a while. However, several days later I found out I was pregnant, which helped me get over my downness. We had been trying for over a year, so we were ecstatic. When the time came that my final paycheck should come in, nothing happened. A week after it normally came in, I called, but was told to not complain, and it would be transferred shortly. 2 weeks later, still nothing. Called again and got a very irate boss on the line, cussing at me and calling me things I will not repeat here. I was fed up and contacted my lawyer. Here comes the revenge part. Mwahaha. First, you're not allowed to fire somebody without reasonable cause. You need to document bad behavior and give the employee a write-up. After 2 write-ups you're allowed to terminate. My boss never did this. Unlawful termination can end in a fine, and the employee has a right to get as many monthly pays as the employment contract would have continued if the employee wasn't terminated, which would mean I had a right to another 6 months of pay. Second, you must pay the final paycheck within a week of termination. We were now going on week 4. After the first week, an employee is entitled to compensation of up to $100 per day of not receiving their paycheck, meaning I was now entitled to at least $2,100 extra pay. My lawyer wrote up a letter to my boss, stating we would be pursuing my legal rights. He didn't respond. A week later we sent another letter, increasing the compensation for late payment as we went. After a month of my lawyer not getting any response, suddenly I received my pay. No compensation, nothing, just basic pay. My lawyer recommended to go to small claims court, and so we did. Mind you, it takes about 3 months before you can appear before court. He didn't even show up in court, but sent a statement through his lawyer, saying how I was a horrible employee blah blah blah. However, he had no proof whatsoever, but I did. I had my performance reports from 1 month into employment and 4 months into employment, and they were stellar. The judge saw right through my boss's bullshit and awarded me 6 months of pay, $12,000, 4 months of late payment compensation. This is because he didn't pay the full amount my lawyer requested, as was my legal right. About $12,000. Legal fees, now about $3,000. I was paid the same week. He was then also charged with a fine for violating employment laws. He had to pay $50K. This resulted in the Employment Bureau. This agency makes sure companies comply with employment laws etc. Investigating the company. They discovered the building I worked at was unsafe. The foundation was unstable. Walls were crumbling and tilting. He was told to make repairs or they would close him down within a month. By accident they discovered he was also cheating on his taxes. So ICE got involved. He got charged with embezzlement and tax evasion for both his companies. He had to pay back all taxes he evaded, plus a 100% fine, coming to a staggering $250K over several years. He didn't have that kind of money, and after struggling for about 2 months, which resulted in him not paying his other employees, he went belly up. Both businesses shut down, and the building I worked at even got demolished. 10 years later it's still an empty plot, and if I ever feel put down by somebody, I take a short drive to that place. And it reminds me, karma will eventually step in. Manager thought my job role was unnecessary, finds out the hard way it wasn't. Here is a case of 2 distinct acts of revenge, combining in spectacular fashion to create nuclear revenge. Thanks to Redditors in r/prorevenge for e-right help. About 20 years ago, I was a sales engineering supporting sales reps at debug tech company, DTC. A new sales manager joins the team. He was a former co-worker from a prior job, a petty little man. Prior were peers, now he was a manager over the sales reps I supported. I had a separate chain of command. He was not my manager, but felt he should be. He was resentful of the power that sales engineers in this new company had. In an attempt to show me up he closed a very large deal with a banking company, ABC, and did so without any involvement from the sales engineers, just one sales rep. He gloats about it publicly, talks about how we don't even need sales engineers, the whole 9 yards. Later, the manager calls me in a panic, and we talk with the customer. The sales rep and the rep sales manager totally messed things up, and sold the customer an incompatible set of solutions. I say that the customer could exchange one bit of stuff for another bit of stuff. Everything would work, and they're roughly the same price so nobody would lose any money. But the sales manager doesn't want to do it, because admitting he messed up would make him look bad. And he complains at me for bringing up price, because that's supposed to be the rep's job. He calls my boss and all over me. My boss took his side, and all over me too, so I'm like duck you I quit. I sent a very lengthy detailed letter to ours explaining how the sales rep messed up, lied to the customer, and how the sales manager and my boss tried to make me the scapegoat instead of trying to fix it, which would have been easy and made everyone happy. I move on, get a new job, do other things. At some point, I'm chatting with an old friend from DTC, and he mentions they messed up a huge deal that they spent a year on. I'm still bitter about the debug sales rep manager and my stupid boss. So I post about it on a forum a bunch of investors use. The stock crashed $13 the next day. This will be important later. I find out ABC is suing DTC for ducking up the deal. The deal that the debug sales rep manager ducked up and tried to pin on me. I reach out to ABC, send them a copy of the letter I sent 2 hours, in which I detailed precisely how badly DTC ducked them over. I talk with one of their lawyers and he's very happy, especially the part in my letter where I describe how the sales rep lied to ABC. DTC subpoenas me for a deposition. I have to tell DTC's lawyers everything that I told ABC's lawyers. Lawyer stuff. The day before the deposition, DTC sues me directly. Remember DTC's stock crashing? They're suing me for badmouthing the company and attempting to short their stock, which I wasn't. However, there's a twist. Because DTC is suing me directly, I don't have to say anything to them at the deposition. Their preparation for the lawsuit goes completely out the window. They know they're ducked because they read the letter I sent ours, but they don't know how ducked because they don't know what else I know or what I've told ABC's lawyers. Additionally, because they never deposed me, that can't catch me contradicting myself between what I say at the deposition and at trial. They're dumbfounded. No idea how they could have messed this up this badly. Turns out there were 2 legal teams. one defending against ABC's lawsuit, and another trying to scare people away from talking about the company on the internet by indiscriminately suing their critics. They don't communicate with each other, and the one team didn't mention to the other team that they would be suing a key witness in their case. DTC settles the lawsuit with ABC, and they drop the lawsuit against me, and they fire the sales rep, the sales rep manager, and his manager too. Supervisor takes credit for my work. I cause entire production to shut down. I started working in a machine shop after I finished school with a 2-year degree in machining. Learned all kinds of programming techniques that could make most machines that were less than 30 years old perform moves and output measurements of parts currently in the machine. To automatically perform quality control, this greatly increases quality of parts as well as reduce waste and human error. I also learned many tricks along the way to make sure that my work could not be stolen. It's my first day on the machine shop floor, and I immediately notice inefficiencies in all the machines in my station. We had to manually perform quality control, sacrificing production time, while also leaving tons of room for human error due to the poor quality of measuring instruments in the shop. I'm new and eager to prove I'm worth more than the original pay they offered. I told my supervisor to let me spend an hour to add a line of code to a machine to demonstrate my skills I learned in school that would immediately cut scrap/waste down by a large portion without slowing production rates on the line. My immediate supervisor humored me, thinking I was bsing him to try and brown nose the engineers and lead programmers so I could get brownie points or something. Quick backstory to note: I had zero experience in a production plant, and said supervisor had 30 years experience in the field. He had a very proud attitude and genuinely worked very hard to learn what he knew. He was decent to work with, but when I asked questions about some of the basics on this machine, like how to get to the program so I could edit it, he would block my view of what he was doing and get to the end result quickly without explaining the process. Being new and wanting to learn, I'd always ask to have him show me what he did. He always refused and claimed it was his way of securing his job. Anyway, I programmed the function into the machine in about 2 hours, 40 minutes, and when it comes time to demonstrate the process, it catches a part that is out of tolerances according to the blueprint. I also programmed the machine to output different messages, providing instructions to whoever the operator was on ways to resolve the issue if the part couldn't be salvaged, or to automatically adjust offsets of the tool that machined the feature that was found to be out of tolerances, and rerun said operation and recheck said feature to ensure quality. All of these functions were performed automatically without any input from an operator. This is a pretty magnificent feature to have in production, and my supervisor knew that. The supervisor who observed the demo immediately went to report this to higher ups, who came to view the new feature I had implemented. As the next part was being produced, the quality check move initiated and found that the second part was also bad and output a message to change tools X, Y, and Z. The managers were incredibly surprised that this was all done on a 18-year-old machine, and they looked to my supervisor to ask how he figured it out. Long story short, he took the credit and was given a raise on the spot. It didn't register to me that that's what happened until I went to ask if he was going to credit me for my work. He said, yeah, but you gotta put in the time to get to where I'm at. It don't matter that you did the job, cause without me, you never would have known how to do your fancy programming in the first place. The next day, I was planning on informing the managers that I was the one who did the programming to do that. The managers were also former machine shop veterans with 20+ years in the workplace and refused to believe me. Not only that, they basically yelled at me for trying to steal credit from someone who has worked their way up in the company and learned everything on their own and not from some school. I went to my station even more pissed now, where I was met by my supervisor. He told me that I needed to go around to all the machines that could perform that function and add it to the code. I said, not without a raise. My code saves you guys tons and brings the bottom line to a level that McDonald's qualified workers could produce infinite numbers of parts with minimal loss. He said if I didn't do it, I would be fired. So I faked my compliance and started to change code on all the machines. If you know anything about programming, you know you can make something function a certain way until a certain value is met, and then have it completely change afterwards. This was my job security. So I set the quality check up on 18 machines the first day, then the last 30 that weekend, and the managers were praising the supervisor uncontrollably for his innovation. Well, the programs were all set to operate as normal and do quality checks, like I programmed the original machine. However, I programmed the rest of the machines to keep track of a new variable. They would run and self-check just fine until they reached a random number of parts produced, 50 to 500 depending on the production time of the parts run on each machine, where it would then throw up an error code that would only be cleared with a password I had set for it. If a wrong password was provided or someone just hit the enter/reset button, the machine would take its largest tool in the turret and run it rapidly into the solid chuck at maximum RPMs. I made it so about 65 to 75 hours of production would go smoothly before my job security would kick in. It took 3 days for the machines to hit their magic values, but when they did, boy oh boy was it magically satisfying. The first machine to crash was making parts for the driver lines of a major motor company. The crash was caused while a new operator was running the machine, who I might add, was only hired because the program I made let them hire clueless people into the shop and be able to still produce good parts. When he tried to clear my password code, the lathe started turning at 2500 RPMs with a large heavy drive shaft base in the holder, switched to a huge drill, and ran the drill into the holder, causing the tool holder to be knocked off axis, the part holder and tools to be destroyed, as well as cost the company tons to get someone from the machine's maintenance team out to repair it. After the first glorious crash, I menacingly mentioned to the supervisor, "You should check your codes to make sure they're working properly." He went ghost white. Not a second after, 3 more machines simultaneously crash in glorious fashion. He starts to chew me out, saying I'm in huge trouble, but as he starts cursing, the managers are there to have him go diagnose the problems with his codes. The supervisor, not wanting to admit he stole my work, doubles down and says confidently, "I know what the problem is," and walks off to the crashed machines. Not a minute after they turn a corner, more machines start crashing. I just sit idly by and listen to the glorious sounds of my nuclear revenge playing out. A few minutes later, all the workers are told to stop production completely. We are all kept in the shop until they can figure out the problems. This is a 24-hour production facility with 3 shifts of workers coming in 7 days a week, mind you. Our shift is nearly over and we've all been idle for about 7 hours. The next shift comes in and we leave for the day. I hear nothing from the shop, so I just go in the next day as normal. Turns out they tried to fire machines back up during the night shift and 18 more machines crashed like the others. The plant did a formal layoff of most of the workers the next week, as they were hemorrhaging money from all the damaged machines on top of labor paid without any production. We filed a class action suit against the company for unemployment, lost vacation time, dangerous work conditions due to the severity of the crashes, etc. The company went bankrupt from the lawsuits and losses in production/machine repairs. The guy who took my credit was obviously fired and had an article in the paper about him sabotaging the company's production. He obviously told them I was responsible for the crashes, but the company found out that the code to my password program was his name. They believed he did this out of spite, cause he was refused a raise the previous year and his threats to them after his last evaluation. Edit. To all in the comments, worried about the innocent workers, they were given 2 months severance pay on top of being able to collect unemployment for 16 weeks. The severance pay outlined by the lawsuit took into account all the benefits the employees had before getting laid off. I do feel guilty that there was collateral damage. However, most the employees ended up with the equivalent of about 6 months paid vacation. So there is a happy ending. I honestly didn't think the company would continue to try and run these machines when all the ones that my supervisor took claim to programming were crashing. That was their fault/greed trying to make money instead of fixing the problems before continuing production. Edit 2. It was 18 machines the first day and 15 a day the following 2 days.